In the near future, the world has changed dramatically due to a global mutation that came to be called the miracle. In the aftermath, powerful companies have found a way to harness the mutagen and create biological weapons within children. They now continue to recruit children to turn them into monsters, but a select few are fighting back. They are known as the Prometheus Club. Jack's story. The air is still and the roads are empty. Clouds dot the sky as a gentle night breeze makes the town of Carrier's Ridge almost feel serene. In the distance, my school bus gently creeps down the road and I hit my flashers to alert the first house that I'm approaching. My eyes constantly dart around the roads to look for signs of trouble. Everything is going according to plan so far, but I know how easily it can all fall apart. I park the bus in front of the house and wait for any signs of life. The request is said to only wait 2 minutes and no more. I can't dare to threaten the lives of my other passengers. In the bus at the moment, there are probably a dozen people trying to get out of this town. This bus could be their salvation or their end. Finally, lights flicker on and I see 2 people rushing with large backpacks towards the bus. I'm careful not to open the door until they're almost there. I don't want to risk anyone else getting on board. This is a planned escape. As long as we stick to that plan, everything will be fine, I tell myself. As soon as they are on, I close the door back, hit the air brakes, and pull off to get to the next stop. Everyone on the bus has become more anxious as time crawls by. We have been lucky so far, but I know that our luck could run out at any second. The next stop is 3 blocks over and I set my timer. All of the passengers look for a new survivor to join us, but it doesn't happen. Someone urges me to drive off. I'm about to comply with that request when a shadow goes across the road. I start to drive, hoping that I was only seeing things, but unfortunately I wasn't. A few seconds up the road, we see a child in the middle of the street. Immediately, everybody on the bus is shouting orders. My hands are sweaty as I try to figure out what to do. But that decision was taken from me seconds later. The child turns towards the bus and I see nothing but pure malice in their sunken eyes. They raise their left hand outstretched towards the bus and I felt my heart stop. The metal frame of the bus lurches forward and groans and everyone grabs onto their seats as the bus slowly levitates. I try desperately to shift gears or drive, but it's pointless. We are putty in the hands of this psychopathic child. We are probably 20 feet in the air, dangling on nothing. A few people scramble to the door and push it open to jump out. The rest of us don't get that luxury. The child twists their wrists and makes the motion of throwing a ball, and the bus is hurtled across the ground like a toy. Crashing metal and broken glass shatter our eardrums as I see all of my remaining passengers become tossed around the interior of the bus like rag dolls. Finally, we're upside down, slammed against a building, and I feel the heat of fire from the engine as the bus alarm screams in response to the attack. People are trying to escape on foot, but that it's just a death wish. The barefoot child uses their telepathic powers to toss them around or choke them with ease. I patiently hang upside down for a few moments longer, my heart pounding in my ears as I realize that they could also kill me with a simple twist of their hand. Finally, I unbuckled and hit the roof of the bus, a glass scratching my skin as I crawl to the opposite direction. The fire and smoke from the bus provide cover for a moment as I move to the closest house, but it isn't good enough. The child finds me, flipping me over with their mind powers and slamming me against the house as they prepare to kill me, choking my air from my lungs. I don't think I'm ready to die, but they don't care. And then unexpected rescue comes in the form of a helicopter spotlight.
Attention adult civilian, you are in violation of curfew ordinances. Stand down.
The child sees the coming black helicopter and runs off into the night as I gasp for air. A moment later, armed men push me down to the grass and then escort me to the helicopter. I am still gasping for breath as we leave the scene of the chaotic neighborhood. My rescuer is a man in a suit with a beard. He doesn't say a word for a long moment until I regain my strength. "And do you know who we are?" he finally asked. "Of course I do. You're with Pantheon, right? The idiots that created these godlike kids," I said. The older man twisted a smile. "And if I'm not mistaken, we're the idiots that saved your life," the man said. My mouth felt dry, and they were looking to make me in their debt. "What do you want from me?" I asked. They leaned forward and stapled their hands. "I must say your stunt with the bus was impressive. We don't normally track that old equipment now that the schools are used as bases. You have skill. You might have made it through the border a few times." I don't dare admit that I had done this for more months than he knows. "Your name is Jack. Well, Jack, we need those skills now," the old man said, leaning back and adding, "Except we need to bring people into Carey's Ridge." I laughed out loud this time. Who would want to do that? Desperation makes people stupid. "Do what we ask and you might get lucky to see your own life again," the pilot demanded. I know that I can't say no. This is another fine mess that I've gotten myself into. The first week working for Pantheon, I tried my best to lock out my consciousness and do the work that I was told. I know that a single wrong move could wind up with a bullet in my skull. These people don't play. I learned that day one when I saw one of the new residents try to flee. Troops that wore full-body armor fired on them without mercy. Sometimes they did it just for sport. I considered just letting it happen. I didn't really feel like I deserved to live now that I was helping them haul fresh meat into their grinder. But I knew if I fell, that would spell death for the people that I care about. My curse was my family, and I had to keep moving forward to look the other way because of them. The families were sold lies, told that Carey's Ridge was a place that they could start fresh, locked away from the rest of the world. No one knew the nightmares that were being unleashed regularly here. Media reports always painted a rosy picture. The quarantine wasn't to prevent infection but to allow utopian society to flourish, they said, and dumping corpses into incinerators said otherwise. Every run the rejects would be lined up outside my bus and slaughtered. Pantheon claimed that they were being selective, but I soon learned a trend. Adults above the age of 25 were always considered worthless to them. A few would be allowed entry as workers or producers, just to keep anyone from raising alarm. The rest would be at the firing range. The worst part was when they made the kids watch. Pantheon believed this would quench any rebellion in their new batch, but I had a different theory. I saw it in their eyes as their parents wept and then were silenced by rains of bullets. These kids wanted blood, and I almost wanted to give it to them. But I've seen so much of what these monsters do that I can't call them children anymore. 2 runs during that first month I was attacked. Once by a group of children, all of whom were suffering from the biomutation that Pantheon had pumped into their bodies. They didn't even have human features anymore. Just writhing flesh and angry raw fury, let loose to kill and be killed. Yet even in this bizarre state when they attacked my bus, I knew that they still had some fragment of their humanity left, because they would try to get the people on the bus out. Let them escape before they too became fodder for Pantheon. But it was never enough. They have a chokehold on this town, I realized as I watched those flesh-eating mutants run amok. Pantheon never killed them. They only redirected their mindless hunt. All for the greater good, they would say. My employer, a man that I soon came to simply call boss, claimed that every new child that was affected by the miracle would be a step further into the future of our species. If this is the future, I told him, I weep for humanity. It was 3 weeks in that I had my first run-in with a different sort of problem. I had crossed the border and made my way into a small town in Kansas. Trout, a rep from Pantheon, was giving a speech to farmers and their children. Only 500 miles from here, the world is being changed. Our company was hired by your government to create that change, and now we are asking you to join our vision of the future. We came here because we see your struggles and your dreams, and we want to offer you a solution beyond what you could imagine. Trout shouted. His voice echoed along past the city streets. Most of the crowd was eating up what he said as I stood by, wearing a clean uniform and looking like an indentured servant, smiling at them as they waited to sign their lives away. I didn't anticipate this being any different than other rallies. But then I realized that not everybody was so happy that we were there. There were rumblings in the back, several people moving through the crowd and making noise that unsettled me. A man with a rifle fired into the air to get everybody's attention. These government pigs are selling you a devil's bargain. We've seen the truth of Carey's Ridge. It ain't no paradise, he said. Trout at first was unfazed by the outburst. Each time we came across the border, we brought armed automatons, just in case things went south. It looked like he was considering ordering them to kill these newcomers, but before he had the chance, somebody jumped from behind the bus and tackled him to the ground. A second later, the entire crowd became chaotic. I watched awestruck as a few of the people in the crowd approached the stage, taking on the armed machines that were meant to guard us. The woman that had tackled Trout managed to procure the shut-off device for these security robots and shut them down, tossing it to the first speaker. He was a taller young guy with dark brown hair and hazel eyes. He looked like he had seen his fair share of battles, and his eyes focused on me as they pulled Trout to his feet. Driver, you're gonna take us into Carey Ridge with no incidents. Your log will say this is a full cargo for Pantheon. Can you do that? He asked. I gave a nod. Trout looked like he wanted to kill me. We got on the bus and I counted heads. There were 6 of them altogether, 4 men and 2 women. They all wore what looked like college vests with a fire symbol on their left breastplate. You know that you'll be killed, I warned as I revved the engine and we drove out of town. This ain't our first time and it won't be the last, the young man who had a gun to Trout's head announced. Seemed like he was the one in charge. I drove in silence for a moment as I checked my manifest. Pantheon was expecting a busload of new clients for the next wave. Instead, I was bringing a team of crazies that I guess were hoping to liberate the people of Carey's Ridge. But I was wrong about that one too. Trout tried to bargain with them, offering them money or to allow somebody from within the border to be given freedom. The group didn't seem interested in any of his ideas. In fact, they hardly talked at all except to ask how much further. We made it to the border by nightfall. I showed the false manifest to the border patrol, and because I had been there just long enough to gain trust, and they didn't ask questions. We drove into town with the sun setting, and then the tech they used to keep this place a secret took over, and we were shrouded in darkness. I can't recall the last time that Carey's Ridge has seen sunlight. Pantheon claims that it helps to evolve the new batches of kids that they experiment on. I think it's just another part of their sick experiment. The leader of the team tells me to head for a particular school. Weber Intermediate, he said. That's where they keep the successes, I told him. What I meant was that the children that Pantheon believed were not total nutjobs or freaks were housed there. Well, that's why we're going there, driver, the leader shot back. I have a name, I told him, and I don't give a crap. Your job has always been transport. Do it right and you'll finally make a difference tonight. I said nothing and I drove down the road, my heart racing as we got closer to the school. I had no idea what they planned to do that night. My mind raced through the possibilities. These soldiers might be connected to the kids somehow. Maybe parents or lost relatives. Maybe they're going to break them out. But when the first wave hit, which honestly feels like a lifetime ago, Pantheon wasn't as strict with their quarantine protocols. Some people slipped through the cracks. I can't help but wonder if that is what is happening here. You can't let them get inside, Trout warned me as we got closer to the school. There isn't a light on inside. All of the children have been ordered to sleep. Nah, this is close enough. Keep the engine running, you hear, the leader tells me. All of them get off the bus and rush toward the west side of the building. I'm alone now with just Trout. He's tied up a few seats behind me, but his threats burn my soul. You know that you can't just let this happen. Drive from here before they destroy our entire operation. Those children cannot be allowed into the outside world. It's too dangerous. You have to think about the consequences here, he ordered. My foot sits on the gas pedal. I've been looking the other way for so long, I don't really know how to make a decision for myself anymore. I know that he's right though. Despite all that I hate about this town, I know the real reason that everybody's locked in here. We keep them from getting out, and it has to stay that way. I realized as I put the vehicle in reverse and started to back away. I didn't make it more than 10 feet before the entire school exploded in a rain of fire. I felt my heart sink and my body shake as I heard the roar of the massive cloud of smoke and the waves of flame shooting out of the windows. Glass broke and bricks shook all throughout the school. Then, from amid that cloud of debris, the 6 soldiers emerged. They had brought with them one of the adult instructors, a woman with short blonde hair. And before I knew what was happening, we were back on the bus and the leader ordered me to drive. Where are we going now? Do you plan to destroy all the schools? I asked. Rome wasn't built in a day. We need to get going. We already got trackers on our tails, he said. I spotted helicopters and I heard gunfire hit the roof of the bus as I hit reverse. My heart now beating out of my chest as we leave the area. What did you do back there? Did you just kill them all? I asked in shock. At first, none of them dared to speak, and their silence actually told me the whole story. You were hired to destroy these successes, I realized. That word is meaningless when it comes to what has happened to those kids. What we did was mercy. None of them have normal lives that they can return to, just further torture from Pantheon. And the ones that do get out just become monsters anyway. One of them said, looking down at the floor. Alarms blare throughout the town as we drive like a bat out of hell toward the border. I wanted to know more about their group, their mission, and who was backing them, but I never had the courage to ask that first time. We had to make it across the border without dying, and that was all depending on me. One thing that I knew for sure was how to escape. I didn't take the traditional roads. Instead, I drove the bus toward the abandoned tunnels, where the helicopters couldn't follow. As we finally were surrounded by darkness, I made another awful decision. Trout will not allow this to happen again. He'll warn every transport to be careful of you. You have to kill him or take him hostage. I can say that I was overpowered and they'll probably torture me because of it, but at least I might be useful again later. I told them as I put my brights on. They knocked out Trout right after I gave the warning, and the second woman remarked, "Oh, he's gonna squeal like a pig when we get him to DC." We drove for hours through the tunnels until we were well past the border. It ended with my bus out of gas about 5 miles from the exit. We can handle the rest on foot here, driver. You did good tonight, the leader reassured me. Given the slaughter that we had left behind and other danger that I was in, I wasn't sure that I believed his soothing words. Will we meet again? I asked. Just look for this, he said, pointing to the fire symbol. "What does it mean?" I asked. "You're a club member. We're Club Prometheus, and don't forget the name," a second man told me as he dragged Trout to the door and then flung his unconscious body over his shoulder. I took a final look at the woman that they had apparently escorted out of here, her eyes tearful but excited. "So your mission is to steal fire from the gods," I quipped. The second woman gave me a roguish smile. "Something like that." And then they disappeared. I anticipated my punishment from Boss, but he still managed to make it the most brutal that I had received in quite some time. They used whips and tasers on my bare flesh, burning and ripping off parts of my skin as I screamed until I passed out. When I came to, Boss wanted to speak with me. He was crunching some peanuts between his grimy teeth as he spit on my forehead. "This is the first time in months that we've experienced a loss this devastating. Do you have any idea how many assets we lost from that facility?" I said nothing. Despite the fact that I was numb to anything but the pain, I still had disgust for the fact that he was referring to those children as nothing more than resources. 300. That's 300 weapons that we'll have to compensate for. Do you have the money to pay for that, driver? I shook my head and he kicked me in the skull. It felt like I was going to black out again, but that mercy didn't come. Instead, he told his armed men to hold me against the wall as he burned his cigarettes into me. "But if those idiotic vigilantes think that such a dent is going to stop what we're trying to accomplish here, then they're dead wrong. We have opened Pandora's box and there's no going back. Only forward, only to the future. And we are the ones that offer humanity the potential to something our ancestors only dreamed about." He was rambling on, but I didn't care. He had a mad gaze in his eyes. He was thinking of another cruel way to discipline me. "Now I have a new assignment for you in the north. There's a town there suffering from a pathogen. Many of the adults are dying and the children will need to be moved to foster care. Your job is to move them here instead. It's a larger job than any of you had before, but if you're successful, we can overlook this little incident," Boss told me. And that was how I was bound for North Washington, a little town called Halderon. Population said they were about 42,000. But as I reached the outskirts of the city, I realized that it had to be drastically less. There was a large mound near the road sign that I first assumed was just compost and trash. But upon getting closer, I realized that it was actually corpses from the pathogen that was hitting this little town. I put a gas mask on and drove my bus toward the Pantheon barrier. Their presence here told me that they already controlled the majority of the area, possibly to create another base of operations like Carey's Ridge. It made me wonder how many other small towns across the country, or the world, this company had its claws in. I showed my company ID and passed the patrol with no problem. As I drove into town, I felt an uneasy sense of dread overwhelm me. Something awful was happening here that triggered memories of when this whole mess had started in Carey's Ridge. Some conspiracy theorists online have claimed these viruses are controlled, all designed by Pantheon to continue their senseless attack experiments. I don't know what to think, because my mind is focused on the secret cargo that I have arranged to bring into Halderon. "You're clear for now," I tell the two masked men that I picked up when I crossed Wyoming. I saw the fire symbol on their jacket, and on impulse I told them my mission. They immediately requested to join. "And Club Prometheus will be in debt to you if this turns out to be a solid lead," the first man told me. I drove down the next road, my eyes darting around to make sure that no patrols saw us. "What is it you think you can do? This is a highly populated town, and these kids aren't like the mutants that you hit in Carey's Ridge," I said. The second man got right in my face. "You just now decided to start having a conscience. How long have you been hauling them to Pantheon without even batting an eye? Any of them that get to a facility are as good as dead. Once they're experimented on, they lose their humanity, he told me. I wondered if that was what he told himself to get over the fact that his mission was to hunt them down. But you don't need to fret too much. We aren't here for the kids this time, the first man told me as I parked the bus and let them out. Look for the fire, and that's when you'll know that we're ready to go. I drove on to the school where boss had told me that I was to meet with another rep. This one was an older man who looked like he was on death's door. There was an assembly of kids outside the school, sitting cross-legged on the front steps behind him, probably about 30 of them. I got out and shielded my eyes, showing my ID to them as I looked at the kids. They all looked scared and confused, trying to understand this new reality that was forced upon them. None of them were over 10. All of them started to get up and get on the bus, not even saying a word. Where exactly will I be taking them? The facility in Carey's Ridge can't house all of them, I added. I think you misunderstand the mission here, driver. You are to take them to this location and leave them there. Pantheon will handle the rest, the old man told me. I kept searching the city for any sign of the fire from the masked men, but so far there was nothing. I had no choice but to keep playing along with this crazy, sick plan. I got the bus packed and drove out the same way that I had come in. I went as slow as I could, but the signal for fire that I was looking for didn't appear. As I got out of town, a pit formed in my stomach. I had gone out of my way to help them, and now this happened. Were they tricking me? Just as I felt that things weren't going to turn around and that I had reached the point of no return, I saw smoke rising from the west side of Helderon. The kids became excited and I slowed down to look in my rear view. Club Prometheus had done exactly as promised, making a mark on the town that could easily be seen. I turned the bus toward the smoke, patrol cars ignoring me in the chaos of the blaze as I reached the barrier on that side of Helderon. The masked men were there and revealed their exit strategy. The fire that was burning was the local airport, and only a single large jetliner remained. We're getting these kids out of here. I nodded and drove up next to the large plane, shouting to the kids to get there. I could already see armed trucks driving toward our location. Men with guns and Pantheon uniforms were driving at top speed to stop us. They're going to kill anybody that is still here, I said as I got the last kid on the plane. In that moment, I realized that anyone that I cared about at Carey's Ridge was likely already dead or worse off. I had no reason to keep throwing my life away being a slave for these madmen. Please take me with you. Let me join Club Prometheus. The two masked men didn't even hesitate to let me aboard, and told me to buckle up as the Pantheon security team began to fire on the plane. They hit the fuel tank of the bus that I had been driving a few seconds ago, and it exploded as our plane roared down the runway. We took off from Helderon with their gunfire hitting our plane at max speed. I didn't stop to relax until we were well above cloud cover, and the kids were cheering, excited to have managed such a thrilling escape. We won't be out of the woods until we make it to Canada. There is a refugee camp set up there where these kids can have a new life. No guarantee that it's really any better than what they had in Helderon, but at least it isn't stuck in a Pantheon lab somewhere, the first man said. The second man was flying the plane and took off his mask. He looked so young that I could have confused him with a high schooler. That first time you struck against them, they didn't take you seriously. Now they will begin to actively attack you and hunt you down, I warned. The second man laughed. I would like to see them try. There's a war on the horizon, and what we did today is just the beginning. Pantheon is going to pay for all that they've done. I felt a surge of pride for helping them. I almost felt like a person again because I could say that I wasn't just a cog in the mindless machine. Above all, I felt hope for the future. The first man offered me a simple badge with the fire symbol blazoned on it. If you want to help, we don't say no to anyone, but you need to recognize that wearing this is literally painting a target on your back. You sure that you want that? He asked. I put it on, surprised that such a simple gesture would make me feel like I was meant to make a difference again. Hey, it looks good on you, he said with a lopsided grin. Welcome to the club. Tanner's story. A car with fancy rims hits the puddle next to me, splashing mud and grime over my face. It's nothing that I'm not used to at this point. The stench from the dumpster that I'm sitting beside covers the other odors that waft over me as I reached for a soggy piece of bread. Despite being in the gutter for God knows how long, I take a bite. Enough to keep me from starving, I thought as I looked across the street. The streetlights give me a view of my target, a bar called Ventura, and I mentally review my plan. Getting inside would be the easy part. The bouncer would be distracted by the VIPs that arrive in 10 minutes. Like clockwork, the women that work here every Tuesday night will give me the opportunity to slip past security. I know how to blend in, but once I'm inside, then that's a different story. Over the past week, I've managed to gather bits and pieces of what the layout of the place is like. Nothing special unless you're a high roller. It was that type of client that I was looking for anyway. So my goal once in the dim light was to masquerade as a waiter. My scrawny body shouldn't attract too many curious eyes, as long as I can maintain the persona for long enough to gain access to the private area. As soon as I finish the mental checklist, the limousine rolls up and I drop the food back on the dirty streets. There isn't a moment to lose here. Paparazzi begin to swirl like sharks around the car as I step toward the private line, keeping my head down and my face concealed. The cameras and the lights do their job as the women flirt with the bouncer. The one that I bribed does an extra bit of work to push her chest out and coyly suggests that she wants to see him later in the night. It's enough to get me in the door. Once there, the screaming country music and the chaotic crowd allow me to not worry about maintaining my low profile. I slip to the side of the bar and study the layout again. The long strip of bottles and beer surrounded by patrons on either side holds the attention of most of the visitors. But my focus is on the employees that weave between the drunken guests and offer extra drinks and provide food. I need to decide which of them I will transform into for the next phase of my plan. It doesn't take long for me to make that decision. A young man, probably the same age as me, brushes past, looking distracted and out of time as he goes back to the kitchen. His unfocused mind will be his downfall. Slinking toward the door as I listen to the commotion in the back of the bar. Here the servers are doing their best to keep things running smoothly, so even though it's nearly as noisy as the rest of the place, I can tell that they're moving with purpose. They have a job to do. And so do I. I think as I spot my quarry slip into the men's restroom. Now or never, I decide, following after him. As he goes to one of the stalls, I noticed a wet floor sign on the side of the wall and use it as a doorstop to make sure that I don't get interrupted. When the waiter came out to wash his hands, there wasn't a time to hesitate. I grabbed him by the back of his hair and slammed his head on the sink, pushing his unconscious body to the slippery floor below. For a moment, I felt a tinge of guilt for being so brutal toward him, but I can't get sentimental. Time is running out, I realize, as I methodically strip him of his uniform and then make sure that I look presentable in the mirror. Breathing in and telling myself to relax, I hear another patron trying to get in the restroom and move the wet floor sign back to its original position. The next customer waltzed in and looked dumbstruck at the half-naked man on the floor. I shrugged, stepping back to the busy bar and moving toward the kitchen. In a place as crazy as this, I will be just another worker bee. I told myself as I found a tray and grabbed several margaritas from the open bar. My next move was toward the private booths in the back. On the opposite side of the bar, I could see the woman from the front lobby entering the curtains, and I realized that I was actually behind schedule. If I didn't move quickly, my chance would be gone entirely. I hurried toward the curtain, doing my best to ignore other guests who thought that I was a server, and then stepping in line behind one of them to the private area. The guard for this area gave me a quick glance before saying something in his earpiece, and then pulled the curtain back and let me into the quieter rooms. There were fewer tables and the lighting was dimmer. The woman who had been hired as private entertainment was the main attraction at the center, and I heard a few men shouting excitedly as a dance began. I scanned the room for the one that I was looking for. He was easy to spot. Two of the women were dangling from his arms as I approached the table and offered them a drink. The white-suited man affably offered to pay for them and gave me a credit card, paying me absolutely no mind. Just in case I wasn't sure, the card confirmed that this was my target. Calvin Weiss, head engineer of Pantheon Science Division. I slipped to the side of the dark rooms and prepared their drinks, returning as quickly as I could to get a one-on-one audience with him. As he sipped his drink, I finally dared to speak. I had planned a speech, but honestly, the moment called for something off the cuff. "You're Calvin Weiss, aren't you? I love your advertisements," I said with the most convincing smile. The dark-haired man couldn't help but immediately take the bait. I could tell that he was the type that probably enjoyed talking about himself all night. Thank you kindly, boy. Just doing my duty to spread the gospel. Pantheon is changing the world, you know," he said with that same goofy southern grin he made hundreds of times before. "Oh, I know exactly how they've changed things. So if somebody like me wanted to get involved in that sort of drug trial, what would I have to do?" I asked, leaning forward. I wanted him to get a good look at my face. "Yeah, you can fill out the app online and go by one of our local stores. Heck, I'll even put in a personal recommendation for you. What's your name, friend?" Weiss slurred. I smiled thinly. Tanner North. I'm from Barnesworth," I responded. A look of surprise washed over his face as he recognized the name of the town. He lowered his sunglasses to try and get a good look at my face now, and I felt my right hand ready to explode as I decided to drop the act. "I've been wanting to do this for 3 years now, Mr. Weiss. I hope you make it worth my while." I laughed as I dropped the tray and pointed my hand at his body. Flames flickered out of the palm of my skin as my entire body started to heat up and my heart raced. The woman screamed and tried to move as I prepared to fire, but the moment did not come. Just as I was seeing fear sink in on a sorry face, I heard the loudest explosion from behind me in the bar and I hesitated. I turned to see what it might be, and in that moment, Weiss struck back. Kicking the table toward me, he shouted for his guests to escape as he called to security. At the same time, the curtain to the VIP lounge ripped down, and I saw a red-haired woman with a long, sharp katana drop from one of the chandeliers. Everything about her demeanor and stance told me that she was not here for pleasure like the others. As soon as she had intruded the room, several guards rushed toward her and she screamed in their faces, using her blade to cut them down. Whipping around the room at lightning speeds, I found myself unable to keep up with her movements, and neither could any of the guards. She smashed bottles and pushed over tables, turning the place into a trash heap as she blurted in and out of the room. Weiss made a run for it, shouting obscenities as his entourage was taken down and trying to use what looked like brass knuckles to swing at the chick. It was a moot effort. She pinned him down and plunged her blade into his right leg, mercilessly laughing as she pulled him next to her by the shirt collar. "Let's go somewhere private to talk, huh?" she said between gritted teeth. "Wait!" I shouted amid the chaos. The redhead gave me an icy glare, daring me to come any closer. My hands became balls of fire again as I said, "I have a score to settle with him too." The girl looked at my unnatural powers and nodded slightly, tossing me what looked like a small badge with a symbol of fire coming down from heaven on it. "Take that to Makra Bay, the old Red Hook Theater. Ask for Ecclesiastes. Tell him a horse sent ya," she responded. I memorized the instructions and stared at Vice. He was begging for mercy like an idiot. "What about him?" I asked. Behind me, I could hear security trying to get close and protect their clientele. She grabbed him by the shirt and rocketed toward the ceiling, hanging from the rafters as she cackled. "Oh, don't worry, I'll leave you a few scraps to play with." And then in a blur, she smashed through a window, taking Vice with her. The room spun in disaster for a few moments longer as I was pushed aside by other security guards. Thanks to her courageous efforts, the entire bar was barely standing, and my little show had been ignored entirely. I was a bit frustrated, if I'm being honest, that after all this planning, my revenge was taken from me. But this is only temporary, I thought to myself as I toyed with the badge that she had offered me. It was time to catch a bus to Makra Bay. I slept on the trip to the coast. My dreams were not pleasant, but then again, they haven't been for quite some time. In the nightmare that was my past, Vice and his goons poked and prodded me. Like so many others of my age, they claimed that we were sick and offered a cure. Pantheon, their company, had the solution to this new pandemic. Like sheep offered to the slaughter, we accepted it without a question. I can still feel what it did to my body. I changed in an instant, but my change to this monstrous power was the most insignificant compared to the vast majority of children that were affected. The others are hardly even human anymore, I thought as I looked up at the news broadcast from Halderon. 300 weapons stolen from Pantheon Labs, the report said. I couldn't help but stifle a smile. To the world at large, Pantheon was an amazing company. They had fooled everyone to being the saviors of humankind. No one really knew what they did to those sick kids, at least not yet. Maybe there's a bigger movement against them than I thought, I realized as I grabbed my stuff and stepped out onto the empty street. Maybe the redhead that I met is a part of something bigger, something that could finally make a difference, I thought. I moved through the empty streets of this port. Makra Bay is a ghost town, and I can't help but wonder if this is another place that Pantheon had used for their mindless war. I see a few old trucks on the side of the road with their logo and corpses dumped onto the street like refuse, and it makes me seethe with rage. These kids once had lives, and yet these mad scientists have ruined their hopes and dreams. I can't help but to wonder what they ever thought they would accomplish with this mutagen. Not that it matters, as long as they pay for what they did to me and to the others, as long as they burn. I finally found the theater that she told me to go to in the downstairs area, and briefly wondered if she had sent me to a dead end. It looked even more abandoned than the rest of the town. Reluctantly, I approached the ticket booth and knocked on the old plywood. I felt foolish at first until the metallic slit opened and a gruff voice asked why I was there. "Horse sent me," I said, offering the token that I had received. A dark-skinned hand slipped out and took it, and then to my left I heard a whirring noise to reveal a hidden door. "Enter pawn," the voice told me. I stepped into the lobby, and the man that had taken my ticket now visible in the gloom. He looked no different than me except that his hair was completely white, and that he had no visible pupils anymore. "Another reject from Pantheon, aren't ya?" I asked him. "Around these parts we consider that a blessing," he said, offering me a blindfold. "Put that on and take my hand," he told me. "Where are we going?" I asked. His strange, soulless eyes appeared to flicker in the darkness. "The Promised Land," he responded. I did as I was told, trying my best to listen to the strange noises as I was taken somewhere. From what I gathered as we moved, we were underground beneath the city, probably by miles. When the blindfold was finally removed, I saw that we were definitely in a repurposed mine shaft, or an old bomb shelter of some sort, with rows of surveillance equipment and spying equipment in small antechambers. In front of me at a small gathering area, I saw the redhead drinking a pint of beer and laughing with a bald-headed man as Ecclesiastes guided me toward her. "So you came after all," she said as the dark-skinned man tossed the pendant that I had given him back to her. "I told you before, I have a score to settle with Vice." The two traded a curious look and she asked me where I had been experimented on. "I don't like to talk about that," I said. "It's rare that Pantheon tosses away good fodder. From what I saw the other night at the bar, you would have made a formidable weapon for them. Probably one of their most successful, if I'm being honest," she told me, offering me a beer mug. "Well, that's kind of the problem. I was a success, for a while anyway. They used me as a poster child for recruits down south. I would give speeches to crowds of eager, bright-eyed kids that wanted to join their legions. I would show off for them like a trained monkey," I told her bitterly. "So what went wrong?" "Vice. He's always been about pushing the limits of human capabilities, and since I seemed to be at the top of the top, he wanted to know if things could be taken further. I was transferred to a different facility somewhere in the mountains. It was beyond top secret. Somehow Vice had gathered other people with gifts like mine and was going to see if he could increase our powers. It didn't go well. I tried my best to shake away the memories, but the dark-skinned man gripped my shoulder and I felt them rush headfirst into my mind. I saw my friends dying before my eyes again, or melting from sheer overload. Their bodies twisted and misshapen and they were living abominations that couldn't die. I realized as I heard their howls and shook them off. "No, I don't want to see that again, please." "Enough, Roman. I can tell that it's truthful. It looks like our intel on Vice was correct. He's gone rogue," she said, pushing her fingers against her chin thoughtfully. "Well, if so, shouldn't we be considering him as an ally rather than another enemy?" Roman whispered back. "You just saw those memories now, didn't you? Did that look like the type of man that we want to throw our lot in with?" she asked. "Well, then we need to find out where this hidden lab is and burn it to the ground," he decided. They focused back on me. "Do you think you can get Vice to talk?" the redhead asked. "He's here?" I muttered, hardly believing my luck. I would give anything to have 5 minutes with that piece of crap. "We've been tracking his activity for some time. Your account of how he's been trafficking gifted weapons lines up with what we believe is a pattern that goes opposite of what his mandate is. In short, Vice is doing something off the books that we need to know what," Clyde explained. "Can't you just use your mind powers?" I asked. "If it were that simple, we wouldn't be asking you. In short, he's got certain biogens in place that prevent me from seeing his memories," he responded. "Yeah, sure, I'll get him to talk. But I need you to promise me that this time after I get what you need, you won't interfere with my own business," I snapped. The two exchanged an uncomfortable look before nodding and the redhead said, "I'm sure the other club members will understand. It's for the greater good." She stood up and went to get things prepped for me to interrogate Vice while I nervously sipped my beer. "How many of you are there?" I asked. Less than a dozen. We're a small operation, but that makes it difficult for us to be tracked. Most of this is automated via satellites into their artificial intelligence that we've hacked. The real work is people like you, giving us a helping hand to shut down Pantheon for good," Clyde told me. So what's with the superhero code names? Horus and Ecclesiastes. It's kind of weird, I told him. "You'd be surprised how easy it is for our information to be leaked, even though we are ghosts. And we aren't superheroes, if anything. I would call us vigilantes. Hey, you're good to go. He's in room 5. Remember, don't kill him until we extract what we need, she told me. I clenched my fists and felt the fire burn up inside my soul. I'll do my best to try not to. When I stepped into the room, Vice looked a little worried to see that I had found him again. His suit was tattered and his hair was unkempt. It was actually the first time that I had ever seen him scared. I don't mind saying that I was relishing what I would do to him. You don't remember me, do you? I whispered as the door behind me sealed shut. Barnsworth, that's what I remember. You were Pantheon's golden child, the recruiter, he said with a chuckle. Guess it was inevitable that the gig wouldn't last, I commented as I sat down opposite of him. I can't help but to think that had I not pulled you from that sorry job, you would still be singing their praises like a trained parakeet, Vice snarled. My left eye twitched. So I should be thanking you then. Oh, absolutely, we were on the verge of greatness and we still are. He leaned forward, a thin smile crossing his face. You and I both know this ragtag band of wannabe caped crusaders will never be enough to tackle the bigwigs at HQ. But what we were doing in those mountains, now that's gonna topple some dominoes. So you want to stop them, I guessed. I think that would be unnecessary. Initially, they had the favor of the people with their promises of newfound tech and advancing the human race. But now they've lost public favor. The people are fickle. They've lost interest in the biogenetic race and don't give two flips what Pantheon does. They won't die out immediately, but they'll be unimportant. Maybe that's what they wanted all along. Who can say? Vice said with a shrug. And you think that they're wasting the potential of people like me? I asked. If what you and these idiots can do is any indication, they've hardly even scratched the surface of our powers as a species. And that's why you need to let me go, he insisted. He had this twinkle in his eye when he spoke. It was disturbing to see how much he enjoyed the work that he was doing. I wanted to say so many things to you when I finally got you alone, but I can see now that none of it matters, I said as my skin blistered and I felt the fire burning against my nostrils. The only thing you're good for is the information in that sorry skull of yours, I snapped. I pushed him against the wall, my burning hand searing against him. He did his best to not cry out in pain, but I could tell that it was hurting him. I would never compromise my work. It's my life. Pantheon didn't understand me. I was hoping somebody of your caliber would. Pity, he spat back. It's a good thing that I don't need you to cooperate. I was almost in inferno now, my eyes blinding over as I pushed my fingers against his scalp. Any chance that he had of not screaming stopped there as I pushed my nails into his skull like needles. They tapped into his brain and I used my other gift to begin to extract what I needed from him. Waves of images flooded me as I felt his pain transfer to my body. My entire being began to shake and convulse, but I refused to back off. His head was on fire now, his screams were so loud that I thought the others would stop me. I pushed even further, listening in satisfaction to his suffering, as I forced him to give me what I needed to know. At last I broke away and collapsed on the floor, the man hardly able to babble 2 words as the door behind me sealed open. "Oh, you're full of surprises. Is that one of the new tricks that he gave ya?" the redhead asked. I call it a mind melt. He's alive now, but his brain is jelly. He'll just be a bag of crap the rest of his days. It's what I call poetic justice, I said as I stood up and took a deep breath. Lovely, what did you see? I closed my eyes again, his memories now my own. I know where he took me, I said and told her to get me a map of the Northern Territories. We moved away from the room and she grabbed one, laying it out for me to study. I pointed it to a small mountain range in western Alaska. The facility is there, I told them. A dead zone. I suppose that makes sense. But that certainly doesn't make things easy, she commented. She rolled up the map and barked orders to some of her workers to start gathering supplies. I want to come with you. I want to join your club, I told her. She chuckled and looked at me like it was ridiculous that I even asked. I thought you were already on board, mate. I sighed in relief, and for the first time in forever, I felt like I actually belonged.